Every great disaster begins with a great idea, or, perhaps, a terrible, terrible one. For decades, we've studied them. The tiny architects of the subflorescence, the six-legged citizens of the underground kingdom. We thought we knew them. We thought we understood the intricate, pheromone-laced operating system of the common ant. We were, as it turns out, utterly adorable in our hubris. This is the story of Project Exodus. A name, in retrospect, that sounds less like a scientific venture and more like the title of a very cheap, very effective horror movie. It began, as these things always do, in a sterile, brightly lit lab on the edge of the Sonoran Desert. The goal, a controlled, large-scale study of collective biointelligence. The test subjects, a mind-boggling, statistically significant population of $50 billion. 50 billion Linopathema humale, better known as the Argentine ant. They were sourced, cultured, and housed in the kind of high-security, climate-controlled facility typically reserved for doomsday viruses or priceless antique cheese. Dr. Alistair Finch, a man whose passion for formic acid bordered on the romantic, called it a watershed moment for insect ethology. We now call it the day the pavement started to move. The containment field was deactivated at 0600 hours, on a Tuesday. 50 billion ants. That's roughly 6 ants for every human being on the planet at the time. A population explosion that, for context, would make a rabbit blush. The footage from the release is deceptively peaceful. A slow, dark tide pouring from the primary containment silo. The scientists, in their pristine white suits, looked like proud parents watching their kids finally head off to college. Look at them, Dr. Finch reportedly whispered, beaming. Perfect dispersion. Following the expected pheromone gradient, they were following something. All right, the initial findings were immediate and baffling. Instead of radiating outward in a logical, foraging pattern, the expected labyrinth of food seeking and territory establishment, they consolidated. The dispersed individual columns began to merge, drawing into a single, dark, throbbing superorganism. Within 24 hours, the local radar systems registered a curious anomaly. A low-altitude, ground-level signature that was too diffuse to be a dust storm and too organized to be natural. From space, it would have looked like a black river, impossibly wide, impossibly long, cutting a perfect, unsettlingly straight line across the sun-baked earth. It was a column of pure, biological intent, and it wasn't stopping for anything. We estimated their top speed was a steady, relentless 1.5 miles per hour. Not fast, but they weren't sprinting a marathon. They were performing a death march. They simply kept going. The scientists, initially thrilled, started to wear a nervous edge. This is a deviation, Dr. Finch wrote in his log, a shaky hand betraying his concern. The vectors are nonlinear relative to resource distribution. They are prioritizing direction over sustenance. And the direction, that was the chilling part. They weren't heading for the nearest picnic basket. They were heading due east, straight toward the nearest major metropolitan area. The march had begun, and the world had no idea the parade was coming to town. The problem with 50 billion anything is that their sheer quantity forces a kind of gravitational pull. As the ant column approached the first rural town, a sleepy, unexceptional place called Oakhaven, the local authorities dismissed the warnings from Project Exodus as academic paranoia. A state trooper, the first to physically encounter the vanguard, described the experience with a shuddering simplicity that chills me to this day. He didn't see tiny insects. He saw the road disappear. The unsettling truth was that the ants were behaving with an unprecedented cohesion. They were not individuals. They were functional cells in a colossal, locomotive body. When obstacles appeared, a small creek, a patch of thorny brush, the billions in the rear would dismantle the debris, while the billions in the front would form a living, sacrificial bridge. They were demonstrating an organic engineering capability that defied every known principle of myrmecology. Dr. Finch, now pale and unshaven, was staring at the telemetry, muttering to himself. The data logs showed that the swarm was moving with the energy efficiency of a modern freight train. They had somehow optimized their march to require almost no rest. They were running on pure, terrifying momentum. They are operating under an emergent directive, Finch explained, trying to sound scientific while his voice shook. The collective intelligence has superseded the individual drive. They are no longer seeking food. They are seeking their destination, and the only thing worse than a $50 billion unit swarm is a $50 billion unit swarm that knows exactly where it is going. It was then we introduced the first countermeasure, high-frequency sonic deterrence, an attempt to disrupt their communication and scatter the horde. The result was, frankly, insulting. The ants merely shifted their marching pattern, moving in a shimmering hypnotic wave that absorbed the sonic waves. It was the equivalent of shouting at a glacier. We were dealing with a force of nature that had just decided to stop following the script. The dark humor, the self-aware wit we try to cling to in times of crisis. It started to feel less like a coping mechanism and more like a nervous tick. we had released an unstoppable machine of biological programming, and all we could do was watch as the map turned from green and brown to a spreading, ominous black. They were getting closer to the city. And the biggest irony, we released them to study intelligence. Now, we were the ones being studied. The march continues. The city is in sight. If the thought of $50 billion microscopic engineers reorganizing our world sends a shiver down your spine, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because the terrifying truth of Project Exodus is far from over. Did Dr. Finch's ambition unleash a catastrophic hyperintelligent swarm, or did the ants simply find a better path forward than we ever could? Tell us your theories in the comments below. What do you think the 50 billion are building? And for those who dare to delve deeper into the uncanny science of collective collapse, click the notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter, where we uncover the swarm's true, chilling destination.